Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So, it's the end of the month of February. 2024 talk is already heating up. You have the presidential primaries brewing currently as we're speaking. You see Donald Trump going out there attacking Ron DeSantis. You see Ron DeSantis hinting consistently that he's going to be entering the presidential race, and you have all of these other people like Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo throwing their hat in the ring, probably only going to get like 1 or 2% in the first primaries if they even stay in the race that long. But we haven't talked enough about the 2024 Senate elections. We know Republicans dropped the ball in several key states in 2022. 2024, the map is a lot more favorable for them, and it is going to be a lot harder for them to really mess this up, although you can't put it past the Republican Party not to. But still, there are 3 Senate races that are going to be taking place in states where Trump won by 8 points or more. Some of them, Trump actually won by double digits, and in the case of West Virginia, I believe it was the second reddest state in the entire union. So we're going to be diving into these 3 key Senate races because if Republicans do end up flipping all 3, which is a plausible thing, even if they manage to drop the ball in other swing state Senate elections like Nevada or Wisconsin or Arizona, getting those 3 would be enough to get them to 52 Senate seats. And it's very unlikely they lose Florida at this point. I think Texas, honestly, would be the most flippable seat for Democrats, and it's probably not going to flip, even if Ted Cruz is not really that well liked among the voters in Texas. It's a presidential year. Republicans are likely going to end up winning in the state of Texas, and we don't even know if Cruz is going to be the nominee for that Senate seat. So we're going to really dive into the big 3, West Virginia, Montana, and Ohio. We're going to talk about the chances of them flipping, who the Republicans should run, the truth about these fake moderate Democrats that have been propped up that managed to barely survive in the blue wave year in 2018. Seems like their days could be numbered, and if so, Republicans will be retaking the Senate. They will get to 52 Senate seats if that is true, and possibly even more. We'll have to see what happens, but it's possible they drop the ball in states again like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, where Debbie Stabenow's announced she's retiring, and obviously Arizona and Nevada. So we'll get into this, but first I have to tell you guys a little bit about redeaglepolitics.com. It is my website. You get exclusive videos 1 to 2 times a week that do not make it out to the main channel. Yes, these are full-length videos as well. You could sign up for $5 a month or 16 cents a day. You get access to all of my latest exclusive videos you won't get anywhere else. You get access to the Discord server and the newsletter and articles that have been written by me and some of my associates there as well. So make sure you sign up. The link is in the pinned comment down below, redeaglepolitics.com. But furthermore, let's dive into this. We're going to be talking about the big 3. We're going to start off with the least Republican state out of the 3, even though it's trending very Republican lately. And we're going to be making our way to the most Republican Senate seat that arguably should be an instant flip for Republicans. And if they manage not to flip it, it would be an utter disaster. And it means that they probably don't retake the Senate. So we're going to dive in. We'll look at Ohio. Their current senator is Sherrod Brown. He's one of the furthest left members of the Senate. And this is true. Brown has kind of like this fake moderate aura about him, and he can talk like a protectionist, but he's very liberal. He's in lockstep with like Elizabeth Warren on most policies and issues. But they put him up there in this Rust Belt state. He's rarely ran against any good competition, and every single time he has won. In fact, you could look back, and we'll go back in the day, 2006 on Wikipedia here. He won over DeWine by 13 points, Mike DeWine there, who was the incumbent senator. Now he's the governor. But he got by easily because DeWine was not popular in the ancestrally Democrat areas of eastern Ohio, and it was a blue wave year with poor Republican turnout. It's funny because DeWine lost the state by 13. He still won Hamilton County, which is where Cincinnati is, which is a county that typically goes Democrat by around 20 points or so consistently in this day and age. Then you go to 2012, and Sherrod Brown won by 6. He ran against Josh Mandel, who was a weak grifter. At the time, he was grifting as a neocon, as an establishment Republican. He ran a quote-unquote MAGA campaign or whatever in the 2022 primary, only to lose to the authentic America First candidate in that primary, J.D. Vance, who has done a phenomenal job so far, proving all of his initial doubters wrong. And Sherrod Brown was able to win there. 2018, you look at the polls early on. We'll actually go down to the polls in 2018 early on, the hypothetical polls, when I believe Mandel was in the race. Mandel was beating Brown in 2018 because you see polarizations, you see shifts there in some of the polls. That was not definitive. But given how close the race was and the fact that Republicans didn't even try, Renacci was very, very lazy, still, it was a lot closer than a lot of people expected. Brown won by a similar margin to what he won by in 2012, despite 2018 being a much worse year for Republicans. 2024, Brown's up there. He's voted for even more liberal legislation. Ohio has moved vastly to the right. And if you put up an authentic America First candidate who is optical and can get enough funding to win, which I think really any candidate could win because it's a presidential year, and those coattails down ballot definitely play a role, and they do matter. If this was like an off-year election, yeah, it's possible Brown could get by, but because it's a presidential year, like especially if Trump's the nominee, he's going to take that state by more than 10 now. Because especially after what happened up in northeastern Ohio with the train derailment. And of course, you have people that are like, well, the Trump regulation, he got rid of it. And it's like, no, if you actually look at the brakes that were used on the train when it derailed, had nothing to do with the regulation. That's what even the New York Times was talking about. So they're running the grift, and it's going to fail miserably. They're trying to cover up for their own incompetency in their response, and we know that because they don't care about these people, which is why they're losing. Matt Dolan has already declared Matt Dolan is a part of that uniparty. He is a loser. He's a poor cultural fit for Ohio. He's socially liberal. He's fiscally very, traditionally establishment Republican. He's a businessman. And you could do a lot better than Matt Dolan in this race. I think Frank LaRose is decent. Foreign policy, there's some question marks there. Warren Davidson would be great. I think a lot of people are expecting him to hold out and go for governor in 2026. But you also have Dave Yost, who is the Ohio Attorney General, who also wins by a lot, just like LaRose does. And Yost does seem to be pretty good on most, if not all, of the issues. I'd be down to see him in the United States Senate. So there we go for Ohio. Let's say that's a flip. Already you get to 50. Now let's move on to Montana. I actually think Montana could be harder than Ohio because Montana has been a weird state. And we know it's been a weird state. And they've elected Republicans by over 10 points during presidential years. And then they've also turned around and elected Democrats for the governorship and also for U.S. Senate as recent as 2012, which you can go back here and you could see that's when Jon Tester won the state. Although keep in mind there was a libertarian who ruined everything and took about 7% of the vote away in a state like Montana. That vote's probably going to be mostly Republican, and Dan Cox, who has nothing to do with the guy who ran for governor of Maryland, ended up causing Republicans to lose in that state, and they saved incumbent Jon Tester, who barely got by over an incumbent in 2006, which was that blue wave election. I think all of these senators came to prominence around that time. I think Manchin came into prominence a little bit later. But you look at this, he ran against Matt Rosendale, who's a lot more established now than he was back then, and he won by 3 to 4 points in a blue wave year. You look at the electorate, it was only like Trump plus 6 or something according to exit polling. And it kind of proved Tester is vulnerable. He's very liberal. He tries to pass himself off as this moderate. He just rubber stamps everything for Biden. And while I think in a swing state, you're going to need an argument that's a little bit more solid than, oh, this person votes with Biden X percentage of the time. I think in a state that heavily opposes Biden or a state that is very pro-Trump or pro-Republican, that is a better talking point. It's going to be a better talking point against Manchin, better talking point against Brown, better talking point against Tester. That's how you win. So what Republican can beat him? Well, you have 3 that have expressed interest. I like Greg Gianforte, but I think he's going to go for another term as governor. He's really proven himself. Initially, a lot of people didn't really see him as this electoral juggernaut, but he's doing a very good job, arguably the best governor in the entire country, even though hardly anybody talks about him. But you have Ryan Zinke. He's got some corruption issues. I don't think he's really that electable. per se. I know it's a presidential year. I'm not saying he would lose definitively, but I'd rather steer clear of him. Matt Rosendale is also a potential pick. I'd rather him stay in Congress. He already lost the seat in 2018. I think he would win it now. It's just not something I'd want to risk. Austin Knudsen is kind of like the electoral juggernaut in the state, who's also pretty solid from what I can tell on the issues, unless I'm missing something. I think that he probably would go out there and defeat Jon Tester. He can really appeal to all wings of the GOP. And keep in mind, 2020 in the state of Montana, if you go to 2020, you could see here the incumbent governor, who was not unpopular, by the way, went up against Steve Daines in a presidential year, and he only outran Biden by 6%? So it's very evident that Republicans do have a clear shot at this race, and it would take a monumental drop of the ball to see them losing. And if they get Ohio and Montana, they already have the Senate. And furthermore, now it's time to talk about the state of West Virginia, because this is a state here where you have a senator who is a Democrat, even though the state voted for Trump by 39 points in 2020. I believe it voted for him by around 43 or something like that, 41 in 2016. That was his second strongest state in both elections. But what we see here is that Manchin gets to LARP as the centrist or a conservative Democrat. He does have ties to the state, that is true, but he still has been somebody that rubber stamps nearly everything for Biden. Yes, he has his performative moments where he acts like he's really doing something, kind of like how you saw for Susan Collins on the Republican side, but even to a much lesser extent than that, because he really is somebody who has consistently been more liberal over the past few years. And even though he can claim like he's this guy that goes up there and blocks Biden's agenda from time to time, any Republican's going to do that better. And Manchin is not really a fan of Trump or whoever the Republican nominee that's going to carry the state by around 40 points is going to be. And that's not going to help him in a presidential year. So you're looking at the candidates. Alex Mooney's jumped in. He has underperformed compared to the presidential results in the state. I think some people view him as a carpetbagger, but nevertheless, he should probably be able to get it done. You also have Governor Jim Justice, who's a little bit weaker on some of the issues, but he probably would defeat Manchin. You also have some other people in the mix as well that could potentially run. So we'll really just have to see what goes down here in the primary. If Jim Justice jumps in, it's very unlikely anybody else beats him. But what we do know is that this probably is going to be an easy flip for the Republicans regardless in the state of West Virginia, which basically would get them to 52 Senate seats if it does happen. Now, we've been burned before, and that very much is true, but at the end of the day, elections in West Virginia, Ohio, and Montana, and knocking off incumbents there is going to be a lot easier than knocking off incumbents in states like Arizona or Nevada or the state of Georgia, especially because two of those three have been moving away from Republicans in recent years. So we'll have to see what happens. But in terms of Manchin, more on that. 2018, he beat Morrissey, who didn't even try, who was one of the worst candidates the Republicans put up this cycle because he was just that lazy. And Manchin couldn't even get 50% of the vote. And that's even after he voted for Kavanaugh and sided with Republicans and conservatives on the cultural issues, in the couple of months leading up to that election or so. And even so, you look at the general election and you go down here and you see the final results. The Libertarian ruined everything again. I mean, if 75% of the Libertarian vote in West Virginia would have gone Republican, which it likely would have, and it would have gone to Patrick Morrissey, well, Patrick Morrissey would be in the United States Senate right now, and he would have pulled off the upset. But once again, Libertarians, Republicans don't remove the Libertarians from the ballots with lawsuits very often, and that's a major issue. And Democrats do that with the Green Party, but we're afraid to do that with the Libertarians because of a principle, and then the unprincipled Democrats keep winning because of it. Yeah, very interesting logic that we have here, but so many people on the right like losing, and that's a problem, but we got to start to stop that. And we got to change the way we view the election system. You got to retake the Senate, keep the House, retake the White House in 2024, go from there. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.